Shalom everybody, welcome to Martus Ministry. This is a prophecy in the news update. We're covering some information about the mark of the beast and the technology and how that's being implemented through the cities of the earth, through the United Nations, the work that Barack Hussein Obama and Pope Francis is pushing. And this is directly related to the mark of the beast in Revelation chapter 13, verse 16 and 17. For more information and detail about the subject that we're covering, do see our video, Pope Obama, United Nations, and the Mark of the Beast technology that we just released. It's important to look at this with a larger perspective of what's going on across the board with all of the policy and the agenda being pushed forward. But going into Revelation chapter 13, verse 16 to 17, about the second beast, which is the false prophet, it says, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name." It's important to note that we have been covering the sustainable development goals are actually met by the integration and introduction of the mark of the beast as a solution to each one of these. And we've systematically went over all of these, including the part where it mentions the rich and the poor, and that is actually the social inequality that they talk about, the bridging the gap between the rich and the poor and the sustainable development. And then the scripture says the free and the bond, which talks about the eradication of modern day slavery or human trafficking, which is their solution in the sustainable development, which will be the mark of the beast to end that. And so that's why the scriptures mention both free and slave or free and bond. But going into more of the details about the right hand or in the forehead, we've talked about the technology, which is the ICT and the IoT technology, that is the integrated science into biometrics and implantable devices that will be used for authorizing identity requests into these devices. But specifically, the buying and selling right now aspect of this being introduced by the Antichrist and the false prophet will be directly related to what Pope Francis, the false prophet, had called for in his encyclical about the sustainable development. Now, looking to this, it's just important to note Vatican VA, Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si, in response to the global sustainable development agendas, it says in part 175, the same mindset which stands in the way of making radical decisions to reverse the trend of global warming also stands in the way of achieving the goal of eliminating poverty, as Benedict XVI has affirmed in continuity with the social teaching of the Church, quote, to manage the global economy. For all this, there is urgent need of a true world political authority. End of quote. Now, it's important to notice here that Pope Francis is calling for a global political authority to manage the world's economy. And this is exactly what Daniel chapter 11 verse 43 talks about, the Antichrist actually having this power. And when we see that, it's very clear. It says, but he, referencing the Antichrist, shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver. And this is the seat of the Antichrist. Now, going to the scripture, Revelation chapter 13, verse 16 and 17, about that seat of the Antichrist having the authority over the global economy and to be able to introduce the solution for the sustainable development is absolutely pinnacle to note that Barack Hussein Obama and Pope Francis are identical on their goals for the sustainable development and introducing the technologies to be able to support the infrastructure for the mark of the beast. Now, when we go into this, it's going to be important that we look at the information. Some of the articles I will cover will be headlines that I will read, and we will have the notes for those in the archive list for the video, so you can read full in detail all of the information in regards to what we're covering, because we're going to be speaking about the smart cities and the policies that Barack Hussein Obama and Pope Francis are aligned on in introducing the technologies to the cities of all the world into the centralization of the network to introduce introduce the solution for the sustainable development, which will be tracking every city on the planet through their sustainable development goals, ultimately to have a worldwide network centralized into their global economy that will be sustainable to track all people within the cities through smart devices and other technologies that they're introducing now. Now, looking to the scriptures, it says here in Revelation chapter 13, verse 16, it talks about the mark of the beast being in the right hand or in the forehead. And it's interesting to note that Barack Hussein Obama, in WashingtonPost.com here, August 27, 2014, actually pushed forward new plans to call for implanted computer chips to help U.S. troops heal. But the technology from DARPA had continued to be revealed and gone forward now to the point to where Yahoo.com is actually reporting DARPA already implanting chips in brains of wounded U.S. soldiers returning from the Middle East. And now it came out September 28, 2015. Now the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, has another individual that we did cover in that last video. She was a director named Regina. And we will actually play a clip from that a little bit later when we get into this. But Regina Dugan, she was actually the Google executive, and she's talking about some information which we'll touch on how that relates. But going back to DARPA and releasing the technology that are implanting chips into brains, it's interesting to see what's going on in Harvard University. We see ExtremeTech.com reporting Harvard creates brain-to-brain interface and allows humans to control other animals with thoughts alone. Researchers at Harvard University have created the first non-invasive brain-to-brain interface, BBI, between a human and a rat simply by thinking the appropriate thought. The BBI allows the human to control the rat's tail. Now, this technology going forward with brain chips and implanting these devices to centralize power into a grid structure to where they have the ability to interact with the internet and with other devices. This is all technology that they have that's coming out, and it's gonna continue to go forward as we go into this information here. But this tracking and manipulation of humans in aspects of all society is the ultimate goal. And this research, actually, if you look at John Calhoun, there's this video called Mouse Utopia, which worked on tracking mice, and it contained social structure and rats and so forth, and looking at how the population would be affected in their social structure through their research and stuff like that. And this is exactly what they want to do to humans in their social structure. This is research that was actually done long ago, but it's actually framework for what they're doing now in their sustainable development to be able to track and to monitor all aspects of society. Here's a video clip of that.
The work of Dr. John Calhoun at the National Institute of Health in Washington, D.C. has attempted to answer this question. In a unique experiment that took years to complete, Dr. Calhoun used white mice to study population growth and its effects on individual behavior. In this 16-cell mouse habitat, utopian conditions of nutrition, comfort, and housing were provided for a potential population of over 3,000 mice. Yet, in spite of ideal conditions, the mouse population met with catastrophe. Individuals were kept track of by color markings on their fur. Dr. Calhoun's experiment is a classic example of a typical population and its growth when left unchecked. Research in this area continues under his supervision. Currently, Dr. James Hill has taken the basics of the Calhoun experiment to study social behavior even more closely. In his experiment, rats are used instead of mice. Healthy individuals are selected to start the population. The rats are anesthetized so that Dr. Hill can perform a minor operation necessary to the success of his experiments. A small electromagnetic encapsulated device is implanted into every rat. This small unit enables sensing devices to keep track of the movement and position of each individual in the population. After surgery, the rats are introduced to their new multi-leveled home, all at the same time. The rats immediately begin to explore their new environment prior to organizing territories and nesting. Dr. Hill will trace how individuals move about in crowded situations. This movement is followed by tubular sensing devices. Every time a rat enters or passes through a tube, the unit detects and registers its presence. This constant movement is monitored by computer. Nesting activity is also studied. Though these studies use animals, the findings about population growth and individual behavior are being closely compared to our own human population. Like all populations that have existed on this planet, many researchers believe that the human race has reached a crucial point in the exploit phase, a point where important decisions must be made.
So we see John Calhoun meeting with Pope Paul VI on September 27th of 1973. He's being coined as one of the leading research of social interaction and behavior science for this type of project, which is what we are seeing being introduced into society now. And it should be no surprise that the direction of the elite are going towards the identical mapping of this type research on the human population that they were actually doing on mice. And now we go into looking at what Barack Hussein Obama and Pope Francis are working towards in their socioeconomic changes into society through the sustainable development. It's interesting to note that Pope Francis had called for a global political authority to manage over the world's economy, and the sustainable development is actually the platform for the community organizing, which Barack Hussein Obama has said that he wants to go on to helping the communities after his post-presidency here. Breitbart.com, April 30th, 2015 says, Obama says he wants to go back to the community organizing after his presidency. President Obama spoke about his post-presidency during an event with school children today, saying he wants to go back to his life as a community organizer. Obama explained that he wanted to try to help people get jobs and educations. He added that he also wanted to help bring businesses into, quote, neighborhoods that don't have enough businesses, end of quote. Quote, I realized that the people that really inspired me were the people who were giving something back to the community or making the neighborhood better, end of quote, he explained. Well, what Obama is directly describing as his post-presidency of going back into the communities and helping bring business and bring the community organizing is actually the political agenda of that global political authority to manage over the world's economy. Because what it is when we look into this is actually integration into the poor aspects of society and integrating them into the smart technologies and the smart devices inside of the larger hubs of the smart cities. And it's a full integration and infiltration of society through technology to bring everybody, both rich and poor, into bondage to this economic system. This is integrated through the United Nations, and when we look to this information, it will become more clear how they're implementing that and why Obama said he wants to go back into community organizing. UNDP.org reports United Nations Development Program goal number 11 of the Sustainable Development, sustainable cities and communities. Make cities inclusive, safe, and resilient and sustainable. Sustainable development cannot be achieved without significantly transforming the way we build and manage our urban spaces. Extreme poverty is often concentrated in urban spaces, and national and city governments struggle to accommodate the rising population in these areas. Making cities safe and sustainable means ensuring access to safe and affordable housing and upgrading slum settlements. It also involves investment in public transport, creating green public spaces, and improving urban planning and management in a way that is both participatory and inclusive. Well, this is actually saying about the sustainable development, the goals, what Obama's speaking about going into community organizing. But it's deeper than just helping the communities. What they're helping the communities with is absolutely important because it directly relates to the economy and the smart cities projects that they're pushing. UNFCCC.int reports for the Sustainable Development COP21 France for some of the draft agreements, October 5th, 2015. The parties in this agreement, PPI, being parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, hereinafter referred to as the Convention, a part of their goals for the sustainable development for the cities is PP6, urging parties to act with the highest possible ambition in the interest of promoting the transition to a low-emission global economy. Article 6 for these proposals for the sustainable development on finance say, number 1, over time, all finance flows should promote the transformation to low emissions and climate resilient societies and economies. And Article 7 in the technology department, it says technology development and transfer. Number 1 says all parties noting the importance of technology to support the implementation of mitigation and adaptation efforts under this agreement and recognizing existing deployment and dissemination efforts should others strengthen cooperative action to promote and enhance technology development and transfer, improve enabling environments for and address barriers to the dissemination and uptake of technology and foster cooperative approaches to research and development. But what are they speaking about? They're speaking about integrating the technologies for tracking and the sustainable development, the analyzing the data of all cities for the sustainable development to lower the carbon emissions and for the global economy. They're talking about integration of the Smart City project in order to track everything in society, and ultimately they will need the mark of the beast to be integrated for all of the aspects of society to be tracked individually, making everybody accountable. Pope Francis is a major pusher of the COP21. He's also a part of this Smart Cities goal because it's ultimately the Pope Francis and President Obama's role in pushing for this. We look at Pope Francis, specifically July 21st, 2015, Global Mayors Pope Find Common Purpose. C40.org reports about the Global Mayors. It says Pope Francis today convened more than 60 local leaders from around the world, including 20 C40 mayors, to discuss the pressing topics of climate change and sustainable development in cities. The 2-day event reinforced the importance of addressing the challenge of climate change and its potentially deleterious effects on the social fabric in cities, highlighting the so-called, quote, modern slavery, end of quote, of social injustice that can be imposed on those most vulnerable to climate impacts. And what he's speaking about here is the modern slavery, and that has to do with the sustainable development, as I mentioned earlier. As we see in Revelation chapter 13, verse 16 and 17, it talks about both free and slave, or free and bond, in this sustainable development goals. And it's talking about the integration of the cities working with mayors of large cities across the world. And he mentioned C40. What is C40? C40.org in their About section says C40 is a network of the world's mega cities committed to addressing climate change. C40 supports cities to collaborate effectively and share knowledge to drive meaningful, measurable, and sustainable action on climate change. Cities are where the future happens first. The C4 Cities Climate Leadership Group, now in its 10th year, connects more than 75 of the world's greatest cities, representing 550 plus million people in 1/4 of the global economy. And that comes from their own website. And the C40.org website also praises Obama. It says here, mayors agree clean power plan is a big win. C40 mayors around the United States were eager to support President Obama's clean power plan, which was finalized Monday, as is seen a key component of the country's climate commitment for the COP21 climate negotiations at the end of the year. So we see the C40 mayors across the world working to integrate technologies into the smart cities for tracking, working with President Obama and Pope Francis, praising them both. And in Revelation chapter 19, verse 20, talks about the beast, the Antichrist, being taken, and with him the false prophet. They're working together. The world religious authority and the world political authority working together on this. And just looking at this smart cities, it's important. The C40 talks about this. Their smart city. Here are their goals. Smart cities and resilient cities. In their report, it says Barcelona's Smart City Strategy, September 19, 2014. In the summary, it says Barcelona's Smart City Strategy takes a holistic view of the various projects being developed throughout the city and uses technology as transversal tool to manage the city's resources and services in a more efficient way. In doing so, it guarantees sustainable social and economic and urban development with the ultimate goal of improving the quality of life of Barcelona's citizens. Well, how do they plan on integrating this? And why did the Pope call them to the Vatican? Because the Vatican actually is a number one leading city-state nation on the planet that is number one in its green technology and smart technology integration. And what do they have? They have RFID tracking, and they have the sustainable green technologies being implemented in their state. Look at this here. Examiner.com, December 2nd, 2012. It says, Vatican to begin tracking clergy and employees with RFID cards. We have learned today that the Vatican has decided to use ID card that has a microchip device embedded inside the card that is capable of being used as a tracking device. It goes on from the Diocese of Montreal.org. They report the Vatican's the greenest city-state worldwide. The Vatican, the world's smallest state, has reportedly become the most ecological, according to Osservatore Romano, the official daily newspaper of the Vatican City. The Vatican City-State has installed 2,400 solar panels on the Nervi Hall roof, measuring over 5,000 square meters. This will reduce the CO2 emissions by 250 tons per year. Why is this relevant? How is this going about? Because their goal ultimately is to microchip everybody on the planet, and they're going to call for that soon as a solution to the sustainable development, and it's going to be integrated through the sustainable development smart cities and initiatives throughout the earth, and it's already in place. They're already ready to integrate this and call for this. The Rockefellers have been working on this and funding on this for a while. We look at the RockefellerFoundation.org. Rockefeller's funding projects for the 100 resilient cities. We see this here. Here's an article here. This is an important one. 100resilientcities.org, April 1st, 2015. 100 Resilient Cities announces Regional Director for Europe and the Middle East, Cristina V. Fragola, to join the 100 Resilient Cities pioneered by the Rockefeller Foundation as a regional director. New York, April 2nd, 2015. Michael Berkowitz, president of the 100 Resilient Cities pioneered by the Rockefeller Foundation, announced that Cristina V. Fragola has been appointed to the role of the regional director for Europe and the Middle East. Well, what does she come from? It says here, Cristina V. Fragola comes from the C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group. She was a director for the European Regional. Now, this just continues to go forward here. You see the smartresilient.com, Rockefeller Foundation working with this. What do they plan ultimately? Let me read the site here. Smartresilient.com. Many cities maps urban residents' daily lives to produce smarter insights. A new freely accessible web application tool that analyzes data from mobile phones reveals the distinct daily behavior of residents of different cities. The huge quantities of mobile phone data being collected nowadays can help to analyze and point up aspects of human activity which would otherwise be difficult to track. They're planning on tracking everything. That's what the NSA, they're all this data harvesting and data mining from all the mobile phone devices. It's just pulling everything through artificial intelligence onto a mass surveillance so they can integrate this into their smart cities. This is crazy. But looking at this, districtenergy.org, leading mayors launch International Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance, April 8, 2015. The Urban Sustainability Directors Network reports that on March 27, 2015, mayors of 17 international cities across 9 nations launched a Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance. In their report, it says here on the point, developing carbon neutrality planning standards, developing approaches, analysis, and tools supporting cities striving for carbon neutrality, and standardizing measurement and verification methodologies for tracking progresses. Here's a quote from the mayor of Vancouver. It says, quote, cities are at the forefront of reducing climate pollution, and we need to aggressively develop new technologies and drive the shift to becoming carbon neutral around the world, end of quote. So this is what these mayors are doing. These mayors are working with the Vatican. These mayors are working with Obama. They're working on the initiative on the global level, outside of local jurisdiction, outside of state jurisdiction, working on an international level to introduce all of these technologies that will be centralized on the global governance scale for the sustainable development for everybody on the planet to track them. And this is what is being introduced. Brisbane on the track to smart city. August 17, 2015 says Brisbane is on track to join Barcelona, Toronto, and Rio de Janeiro as smart city capable of collecting and analyzing real-time data to improve livability, according to IT guru Gordon Feller. Quote, the first layer is fairly basic and allows people to be walking down the street and access kiosks to find out information such as energy consumption in their suburb. End of quote. Quote, the next level is for people who are managing different districts of the city and are concerned with carbon footprints because the city as a whole is working towards reducing emissions. End of quote. Then the third layer, quote, then the third layer is more of an analytical and predictive dashboard which allows councils to try and prepare for future of their city. End of quote. That comes out of heraldsun.com.eu. How are they doing this? How are they getting all this collection for this data? Well, it's done through RFID tracking, through device technologies. All of the integration for these smart cities are being implemented. You see this, the refrigerators, they're talking about the refrigerators collecting data. This is why they got this stuff. This is why people are talking about it. They may not know, but what they're doing is centralizing all the technologies for like your refrigerator. Look at this, RFIDjournal.com, NFC-enabled refrigerator shares data with mobile phones, August 5th, 2013. What they're doing is they're collecting data, how much food you eat, how much food you consume, so they can make sure you're sustainable. This is all a part of their goal for the tracking, and ultimately, they want you to have a microchip in you so they can monitor and analyze your data. That's what they're doing. You see this being integrated into the stores, RFIDjournal.com. Target announces nationwide RFID rollout. This is why you see in Walmart the self-checkout lines. All of this stuff is being integrated. IBM.com/smarter cities. This you can look at their website here. This is why you see stuff like this.
Excuse me, sir. Forgot your receipt.
Checkout lines. Who needs them?
Have a nice day.
This is the future of e-business.
So you see the IBM commercial here with a man with an RFID tracking device able to purchase things without even talking to somebody. This is all what is being engineered and prepared. And remember, I mentioned Regina Dugan, Google executive. Look what she said about having the authentication tokens inside an embedded implant in your body to actually authorize your identity.
Well, we're thinking of a whole variety of options for how you could do better at authentication. So you can start with nearer-term things like tokens or fobs that might have NFC or Bluetooth embedded in them, but you can also think about a means of authentication that you could simply wear on your skin every day. But you could also imagine including authentication in just your daily habits. So I take a vitamin every morning. What if I could take vitamin authentication?
What?
Vitamin authentication. Look, I have one right here. Well, here, I'll let you hold it. Would you like to hold it?
I'll hold it.
Okay. So this,
You guys see it?
this pill has a small chip inside of it with a switch. It also has what amounts to an inside-out potato battery. When you swallow it, the acids in your stomach serve as the electrolyte,
That's what I do.
and they power it up, and the switch goes on and off. And it creates an 18-bit ECG-like signal in your body, and essentially your entire body becomes your authentication token. Yes, this is true. Okay?
Okay, but
Okay, so wait. So it's really true. So what this means is that that becomes my first superpower. I really want this superpower. It means that my arms are like wires, my hands are like alligator clips. When I touch my phone, my computer, my door, my car, I'm authenticated in. First superpower. Like, I want that.
This is all the direction they're going with this. This is the future of their cities. You can see this. This is just crazy. This is actually the mark of the beast technology. It's already here. It's ready. IFTF.org for the In Future of Cities Information and Inclusion. They have information about what their goals are for the sustainable cities and for the resilient cities and for smart cities. It says here, a plan of civic laboratories, the future of cities information and inclusion, funded by a grant from the Rockefeller Foundation. The Institute for Future has identified this challenge, harnessing data for development and inclusion as a critical cross-sectoral urban issue for the next decade and beyond. The coming decade holds an opportunity to harness information to improve government services, alleviate poverty and inequality, and empower the poor. What is that word inequality? The inequality is the gap between the rich and the poor. Now in the subsection it says quantified communities. Now talking about the communities, what they have planned for these communities. As Obama wants to be a community organizer, helping these communities organize through these smart cities and these initiatives that he's pushed forward. Check this out. This is from their source for the future of cities information and inclusion. Quote, from personal sensing to data-based identity and networks, the spread of mobile devices will expand personal sensing as devices allow individuals to measure and record data about their activities, movements, surroundings, financial transactions, and health. These digital footprints, when combined with interest profiles and even personal genetic data, will become a new raw material for shaping identities and forming new social relationships. End of quote. This is coming from them. This is their own mouth saying this in their own work. And this is why we see the whitehouse.gov just recently, September 14th, Obama fact sheet administration announces new, quote, smart cities, end of quote, initiative to help communities tackle local challenges and improve city services. Today, the administration is announcing a new, quote, smart cities, and end of quote, initiative that will invest over $160 million in federal research and leverage more than 25 new technology collaborations to help local communities. This is preparation for the mark of the beast. It's here. It's the Internet Society working with the United Nations to centralize the power of the Internet is all a part of this integral system to be able to make sure that they can centralize the power of this technology. Once it goes full force, they're ready to do it. You see them talking about the future of brain implants. You see that the Google executives talking about nanobots being implanted into the human body to be able to integrate it into the Internet. You see the Internet Society talking about the IoTs and the ICTs to be able to be the global collaboration for the Internet. Now, that's exactly what was going on with that is the U.S. government actually ceding control of the Internet. That was just actually going forward from last year to this year. We see U.S. government cedes control of the Internet, May 15, 2014, talking about the ICANN, which the Internet Society has a hand in as well. That ended and expired in September 2015. So we just see this going forward. We see that Kaspersky, they're promoting the implant chips, and they're talking about this stuff. They're doing tests for security. Kaspersky is one of the number one internet security and virus scanning software companies out there that is doing this stuff. So what we're looking at here right now is a full-blown move by Barack Hussein Obama, Pope Francis, the United Nations, and Sustainable Development to integrate the mark of the beast in every city in the earth. If you don't know the Lord Yeshua, you need to repent now and ask Him to save you. Because time is short, there's not much time left, and do not take this mark. If you take this mark, there is no hope for salvation for you. Do not take this under any circumstance. This is not a game. This is very serious what we're sharing here right now. They're going to integrate this, and it's soon. So sound that alarm, share this video, wake people up. This is Martus Ministry, Prophecy in the News. Shalom.